Welcome back, folks. Well, the blockbuster summer movie season is done, and we are now transitioning into the more award season fare. Devin D. O'Leary, the Weekly Alibi, here to break down some movies. Nothing really blowing up in these movies this weekend, is that right?
It's a small weekend. The summer's over, and we only have actually one single film that's in national release this week.
Really? Okay, so the first one we're going to take a look at, something that I think that Elvis fans might be a little interested in, called The Identical. Let's take a look.
You sure your daddy's okay with this?
Oh, yeah, man, I take this car all the time.
All right, so is this guy Elvis? Are we looking at Elvis, or is this sort of?
Well, they couldn't afford Elvis.
Gotcha.
This is based on the idea a lot of Elvis fans know. He had a twin brother when he was born who died when they were born. This kind of speculates, well, what if his brother lived and was adopted by a preacher and his wife and was raised to become a man of God, but then decided that maybe he should be an Elvis impersonator, or in this case, the generic equivalent of an Elvis impersonator. And so it's these two characters kind of growing up and becoming famous in their own worlds. It's the main actor is actually an Elvis impersonator, a well-known award-winning Elvis impersonator. He does a really good job. Since they couldn't afford and didn't get the rights to Elvis, there are no Elvis songs in this. They're all original made-up songs. And the main actor is obviously very good at what he's doing. He's been doing this for years. Not a lot of people know this because they're not really billing it this way, but it is this new category of what we call faith-based films. So this is a religious film. Okay, and they seem, a lot of these faith-based films, they don't position themselves really as faith-based films right out of the gate. No, definitely not. And less and less. And this one has a fairly mild angle to it. Ray Liotta plays one of the fathers in this and is a reverend, but has a very sort of nice approach to it. And so that is an element of it, but it does weigh a little bit more toward the music.
Gotcha, okay. All right, the second one I'm really excited about. This is kind of a quirky romantic comedy starring Elizabeth Moss. Of course, people love Mad Men.
Yes.
Mad Men fans will love this. And this one is called The One I Love. Let's take a look.
It's like a perfect retreat. Just the two of you. I've sent a lot of couples there, and they've all come back renewed.
All right, so this one seems a little bit more on par with like a Chris Kaufman, Spike Jonze kind of film. Let's talk about this.
It is a little hard to talk about it because it does have some unusual twists for being a very simple romantic comedy. Elizabeth Moss is married to Mark Duplass, who's a filmmaker. He's been in a number of sitcoms lately. He was in the Mindy Project. You might know him from there. They're a married couple and they're having trouble, and so they go to their therapist, who's Ted Danson, who does an interesting, bizarre twist there. And he sends them off on this vacation for the weekend to spend some time in this cottage, kind of in the woods, by a lake and everything. And some very strange things start happening while they're there sort of exploring their relationship. They start having conversations that they don't quite remember, and they start doing things that don't seem to match up with what the other one says they were doing. And so it's got this sort of a science fiction twist to it. It's small, but it's pretty significant. It is a really small film, and it's mostly just these two characters talking. And so it's got a very, very indie vibe to it. It's really just these two characters. And so if you are familiar with that style of independent filmmaking, of romantic comedies that aren't necessarily hilarious, but have sort of a dramatic edge to them as well, it's kind of a whole mix of a lot of different things with a little bit of science fiction thrown in there.
Wow, very cool. All right, and last but not least, one that I think the trailer just crushed me. I thought it was very sweet. It's kind of a road trip for the young at heart. Let's talk about Land Ho. Take a look.
I have to tell you something that you might not like.
Okay, what?
I bought us 2 first-class tickets to Iceland. The hot springs, the juicy, fantastic lobsters, and the gorgeous broads.
I don't like lobster.
All right, so this one kind of a buddy pick, a roadshow pick. Okay.
Got two sort of lifelong best friends who were married to 2 sisters a long time ago, and now they're older, retired, and they decide, well, let's go on one last sort of crazy road trip. Let's go to Iceland. They just kind of pick Iceland out of nowhere. And it's just this very simple road trip of these 2 guys. One guy is kind of a little more loudmouthed and a little more pushy, and the other guy is kind of quiet, a little more reserved. And they're just on this tour of Iceland, which they don't really know anything about. It's them eating wonderful meals and talking to each other and seeing these amazing geological sites. And the film doesn't tell a really big story. I mean, there's not a big character arc for these people. There's not they don't introduce a bunch of other characters. It's just really the 2 of them and their friendship and how they talk to each other. And it's really through those little conversations and the way they react to each other. You understand why they're friends. You know,
Gotcha.
it's a little odd because it's kind of a mismatch, but it's really nice with these two actors, and through all the dialogue, how you get to know these characters.
Yeah.
Nicely done. Very little film. Not a lot happens in it, but for certain audiences, I think they're really going to appreciate it.
Yeah, and the reviews have been really great on
Yes.
this. Variety, Hollywood Reporter, all been saying really lovely things about this
Absolutely.
film. So very excited about that. Well, for a full recap on this, also everything else that is going on in theaters and on your boob tube, head over to thealibi.com or pick up the Weekly Alibi, which is on newsstands now. Devin, thanks so much.
Absolutely.
We'll see you next Friday.
Definitely.
Let's head back into the kitchen with Brittany.